Afternoon, good morning, good evening, whenever you are watching this video game review video of WrestleMania, the arcade game, and WWF in your house. Now I picked both of these up from at MagFest. WrestleMania, the arcade game, I got for $2. As far as for WWF in your house, so you know the price tag says 15. I picked it up for 10. Saved $5. Question is, was it even worth 10? We'll get to that. But first, let's talk about WWF WrestleMania, the arcade game. This was developed and published by Midway. They also had, there was another publisher who did the console ports, but who cares about that? This not only came out in the arcades, which I will explain, also came out on the Mega Drive, the SNES, the PlayStation, the Saturn, the DOS, and the Sega 32. Now this came out August 10th, 1995. It was up to 2 players simultaneously, very good for the time, and the game did feature digital representatives of 8 WWE performers who were pitted against each other in a fast-paced match that's inspired by Midway's Mortal Kombat. Commentating is done by Mr. McMahon, Vince himself, and Jerry the King Lawler, who also appear in the game sitting at the announcer's table to the right of the ring. Now we're going to get to the other game, Acclaim, who published the follow-up of this, which was WWF in your house. Surprisingly, Acclaim also did the WrestleMania port as well, which is to some people's surprise. You know, it did go by a different name back then, but it's alright. You can call it Midway, Acclaim, whatever you want. Now, like I just said, this was based on WrestleMania around 1995. And the gameplay pretty much was, think Mortal Kombat meets wrestling. And each character did have its own special moves and combos, such as The Undertaker's casting spirits at an opponent, or Doink the Clown shocking the opponent with a joy buzzer. Now, WrestleMania's one-player mode has the player choose one of 8 wrestlers: Bam Bam Bigelow, Bret Hart, Doink the Clown, the Total Package Lex Luger, the Bad Guy Razor Ramon, the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, or Yokozuna. One unique feature is that each character can bleed his respective objects, other than blood, upon taking damage from most attacks in the Mortal Kombat sense. Such bleeding objects include Yoko's food or Bam Bam Bigelow's flames, just to name a few. Now, it does feature 2 play modes for single player: the Intercontinental Championship and the WWF Championship. In the Intercontinental title mode, the player must win 4 one-on-one matches, 2 handicap matches 2-on-1, and 1 3-on-1 match to win the Intercontinental title. In the more difficult WWF title, the player must win 4 2-on-1s, 2 3-on-1s, and finally a WrestleMania challenge where the player must defeat every wrestler in the gauntlet, starting with a 3-on-1 setup with each eliminated opponent being replaced till all 8 have been defeated. Now the game also does feature 2-player multiplayer modes, head-to-head and 1-on-1 match between 2 players, or where the 2 players team up in a version of WrestleMania Challenge, where they must defeat the game's 8 wrestlers in groups of 2 to become the tag team champions. Now, believe it or not, many years after the game was released, one of the developers confronted no movement that Atom Bomb was a hidden character, but also stated that the character in the game was not fully completed. Now, there were many ports for this, like I said at the beginning: Mega Drive, 32X, the NES, PlayStation, Sega, Saturn, and DOS. Now, the NES version released amidst Bam Bam and Yoko. When the maximum of 3 characters on screen simultaneously, the game slows down. It also lacks several voice and commentary samples, and damage taken by in-game fighters from attacks was reduced. Now, the Genesis version, now I'm just going from what I have played. The Genesis version does feature the most, but we're not talking about that. We're not even talking about the NES, so fuck that. You know, I do on the NES version. We're talking about the PlayStation 1. Now, I played it. It does feature all 8 characters, and it plays very well. Now, graphically, it's not as good as it was back in the day, but gameplay-wise, it's still pretty damn good. And believe it or not, it's still fun to play. I mean, I was playing it geez, when I came home from MagFest, and I was playing it this morning. You know, it's a very fun game. Would definitely recommend it if you can find it. Now, like I said, I paid a pretty damn good price for this. Very cheap price. I will give you my official score of the game near the end of the video. But now let's go to WWF In Your House, which is very interesting, by the way. Very interesting. But, yeah, I know I'm saying it again, but it's very interesting. Came out on the DOS and the Sega Saturn in 1996. Now, depending where you lived at, it came out on the PlayStation either November 21st, December, or February 27th. Since I live in America, I would have got it November 21st. Now, with that being said, just like WrestleMania, In Your House is not a wrestling game in the normal sense, as it heavily is influenced by Mortal Kombat. The game also featured finishing moves which are performed before the final pin. Now, instead of the typical arenas, WWF In Your House featured professional stages for each individual wrestler. Now, before I talk about the arenas, let me go over the list of stars who was in the game. Bret Hart, Ahmed Johnson, Vader, Goldust, Ultimate Warrior, Owen Hart, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, the British Bulldog, The Undertaker, and Shawn Michaels. Now, like I just said, each wrestler had a different arena. If you want to tell how bad this is, look at the back. It's Space Jam's fucking preview. Space Jam they want you to buy. But that's not why we're here. And by the way, this is the manual. Yes, I actually found one that had the manual. This game did have power-ups as well. It had good and bad ones, so be careful. Now, each one had its own arena, believe it or not. The British Bulldogs arena was London, so be careful on that. Some of them made sense. Goldust was a Hollywood theater. Made sense. Bret Hart was the Stew Dungeon. Again, makes sense. Owen Hart's King of Hearts. Well, anybody who knows Owen Hart's gimmick back in the day, he was known as the King of Hearts. Again, makes sense. Hunter Hearst Helmsley was a rich fucking place's lounge area, I want to say. The arena makes sense because that's what his gimmick was at the time. Because believe it or not, guys, some of you who do not remember the pre-Attitude Era, Hunter Hearst Helmsley came in playing a rich, snobby bastard. Go fucking figure. Ahmed Johnson, first Black Intercontinental Champion. Locker room. Yeah, not the real most fun one. Now, Shawn Michaels was the Heartbreak Hotel Club. It was a club. I thought it was always it was a hotel in a club. So whichever one you want to use. Now, the Ultimate Warriors was the parts unknown, but it felt to me more like Arizona to me. And of course, last but not least, Undertaker's was a how do you put it? A crypt. And Vader's was the Rocky Mountains mine area. Now, each character did have his own strengths and weaknesses to a certain degree. Ultimate Warrior, Vader, Undertaker, and Ahmed Johnson, they were probably the four slowest. Get the fuck back in here, you stupid manual. But they were also the four most powerful. Whereas as far as for the British Bulldog, Owen Hart, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and Goldust, they were your typical in-the-middle guys, not the strongest, but not the weakest. They were your, in the middle. And they were pretty old-fast as well. Now, as far as Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, what they made up for in strength, and they had in the speed, they didn't really give a, rating for them back then, but I kind of did. And, of course, commentating is done by Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig and Vince McMahon. Now, this does have some good points that WWF WrestleMania the arcade game did not have. WWF In Your House has a 4-player option. So you could, do 4 players. And it, of course, had the Intercontinental and WWF and the tag team thing as well. Now, the graphics are a little better than WrestleMania's. But the only good thing I could, besides an updated roster, WrestleMania was actually the better game. Now, yes, In Your House is for the multiplayer crowd. You got 4 players, So congratulations to that. But at the end of the day, it's not as good as WrestleMania. But both of these games would be great for that nostalgic feeling of classic wrestling games from the 90s. Now, my final scores for each one. Let's go back to WrestleMania. Control-wise, it does still hold up. Gameplay-wise, still holds up as well. Graphically, not that good. But I'm going to let that slide because of the nostalgic. So I give WrestleMania, the arcade game, 4 out of 5. Definitely would recommend picking this up. One of the best wrestling games that came out at that time. This would actually the only other game that would actually beat this was WWF WrestleFest, which maybe one day I'll actually get to review the new one if it eventually comes out on the PlayStation Store. Now, as far as for WWF in your house, gameplay-wise, you know, it's a pretty much exact thing as WWF WrestleMania the arcade game. The only difference is the roster. That's pretty much the only difference between the two besides commentating in the arenas. I give WWF in your house a 3 out of 5. You know, simply because of the fact of it does have this nostalgic feeling, but it doesn't hold up graphically compared to the other one. Now, I mean, now WrestleMania one holds a little better than in your house, surprisingly. But the special moves are a little better, and the fact that they did add more people, and you can play 4-player, saves it from getting a 2. Definitely would recommend picking up both, but if you can only get one, I'd recommend WrestleMania, the arcade game. Now, of course, I will have 2 more other videos going up later today. 2 more, both of them, by the way, are wrestling video game reviews. One, which will be another 2, we'll have 2 video games in it, excuse me. WCW Nitro and Power Move Pro Wrestling. God help us all on that one. And the other one is WWF Attitude. So I'm not going to narrate you Attitude fans who still think it's 1998. So until then, this is your boy, the DOUG, signing out saying have a great day. Woo!